In trying to protect teens, we send a message that we don't trust them.
Are there skills that we're teaching our kids not knowingly that's making them actually less resilient?
If we don't get kids normalize talking about things like, these are my strengths, like, this is who I am, I'm good at different things than you, then they can forget how important that is. I wanted to create something that's so simple that it would walk you through resetting your relationship. So it's basically one conversation.
What's up, Kristin? Welcome to Dad Edge. It's so good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's start out with this. You've been married for 3 decades.
More.
More.
3 decades, 2 years, and 6 months or something, right?
But who's counting?
Oh, no.
I know we're going to talk a lot about, relationship resets. We're going to be talking a lot about resilience, but to be honest, there's a lot of guys out there that listen to the podcast, and it's not often that we get to hear from women on the show. I mean, I am never against interviewing women. It just so happens a lot of guys want to come and talk on the show.
But I noticed that when it first came up, I was like, does he take women? But then, yeah.
Yeah. But here's the good news. The downloads for my female guests way surpass the males. So guys really want to know, they really want information from the women that come on the show. So I'm curious, 3 decades of marriage, what are some things what's some advice you could give to the guys who have been married maybe 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but anybody who's married, what are some lessons you've learned along the way?
One of the things that I really appreciate about my husband is that when we get a little, distant in a rut. I mean, trust me, there have been times, right? There are the years when you're like, what are we doing? Do we even like each other? But he, I mean, it's true, at least for us, but he puts his foot down and says, we need to connect. This is not acceptable. We need to connect. We need to have date night. And so I really appreciate that about him. And speaking from kind of the male perspective, he has been willing over the years to actually go to therapy. I am a therapist, but so when I was going to school to be a marriage and family therapist, I said, hey, I need to do couples counseling in order to know what I'm going to be helping other people with, right? And he at first was like, I'm not sure about that. And then just loved it because you get to say whatever you want and get validated. So he's been willing to do the work.
That is really cool. I love the fact that he, when you guys aren't connected, he's like, we need to be connected.
Yeah.
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 That is really cool. I think that I think that it's a couples thing. I mean, as far as, it's not just a man thing, that the guy doesn't speak up, but I think a lot of couples, I'm sure in your practice too, you probably have seen couples go years and they don't speak up and they don't connect. And then it just turns into resentment and disaster.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where just little baby pebbles of resentment, if you just start to get disconnected and you don't talk, it just grows and grows until it's so big. But the good news is most people don't do it on their own, but when people come in and they actually really want to get the help, once you start having real conversations in a way, if you're married, if it's not too late, right? A lot of people go to couples counseling too late, but if it's not too late, and you genuinely want to work on things, it doesn't take forever. You don't have to actually go through and resolve every single thing that ever happened. You just have to start talking. And so I always say, it's everyone says this, right? But it's having check-ins on your relationship, putting it on your calendar once a week. It's not the same as date night. You can do it on date night, but date night's supposed to be just fun, right? By having check-ins. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 30 one day. But the point is that when you are in an argument, you don't think well, right? If you're good, which a lot of couples aren't, and you go back the next day and talk about it, that's fantastic. You're ahead of most people. But that's still not the same as when you're everything's good, there's nothing going on at the moment, but you just have a check-in. What are we doing well? What could we do better? That's where you really can just nip all that stuff in the bud.
Do you think a lot of people actually they don't do that first step, which is like what's working. They want to tackle the things that are wrong, missing, or broken.
I love that you bring that up, right? Because you think about it, you don't want those conversations to all be about what's wrong because you can forget why you love the person in the first place, like all those little things. So I always start out and at one point in the sessions, let's talk about what's working. Let's talk about the good stuff because it's there. It's just the other stuff is louder.
Oh, it's so good. It's there, but the other stuff is louder. That is so true. That is so true. And what about parenting? So you have three kids. How old are
Yeah.
your three kids?
27, 23, and 19.
Okay.
Two boys and a
So
girl.
two boys and a girl. Okay. So talk to me a little bit about just lessons that you've learned to just help the guys who are raising kids, maybe a bit younger than yours, and we're just trying to figure it out. What advice do you got for us?
Because you have four boys, right?
Last time I counted.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a lot of boys. I grew up with three brothers, but
Oh my
so
gosh.
I think like I always say the number one thing you can do for your teens' mental health is get them to talk to you, which is also the hardest thing to get teens to do. So really, like in both of the things that I'm focusing on in my career right now, they're about that, like getting teens to talk to you. So we can come back to it, but like the Mindset Moments program in schools is all about prompting conversations. And then the relationship reset is about that same thing. Like, how do you start talking to your kids or your teens, especially when it's like, sort of devolved into that monosyllabic, even on the best of terms, right? When you're like, things aren't really bad, but you're still getting the like, how was school? Fine.
Fine.
What you do? Nothing.
Nothing.
And you're like working so hard. And also, it's hard. And so how do you get teens to talk? I mean, that's really where the rubber hits the road. And there's so much to say about that. But I guess the two things that come to mind for me are like leading with listening, right? It's like instead of so the one of the things that parents often do is like pepper with questions because you just want to connect. So you can't lead with listening if your kid won't talk to you. So let's like table that. I shouldn't have started with that, right? But the just leaning in for your kid and saying, I'm looking for ways to connect with you, but I'm just not sure how. But I believe it's important to you because that's the thing that I hear in my office every single day is teens want better relationships with their parents too. It's just devolved to the place where they don't really know how to do that. So if you ask your teen, like what comes up for you? And usually like super tactical things, like it's just that when I get in the car, like if your kid doesn't drive yet, when I get in the car after school and that's when you really want to chat, that's the time when I want to chat the least. I hear that from teens all the time. They're exhausted from the day. Maybe it was stressful, whatever went on, and they don't want to have to report out, right? But maybe later, like maybe before dinner or whatever, there's a time when they actually want to just like chill and talk. So ask them. And even like yesterday, I had a teen say to me, she's really busy and her dad's busy, so their schedules don't really mesh. But like the time he wants to talk is 6:30 in the morning before school, and she like, would rather do anything other than chat at 6:30 in the morning. But this can be, just ask. This can be solved, right?
So true.
Yeah.
I never yeah, but that makes total sense. Like the teens don't want to report out right after school.
I mean, do you? Personally, I am not a reporter outer. Like my husband loves to report out, so I think it's a personality thing. But
I'm not, no, I'm not. In fact, when I usually get done with my day, that's the last thing I actually want to do is talk.
right,
I
because
need
you have
like a,
kids
yeah,
coming up from school, right?
yeah, I need like a little bit of a breather. But let me ask you this is, and I'm sure this is all individualized, but, have you found that one of the best times to talk, could that be right before bed?
I mean, I have found that personally. I think it's totally individual. I was actually listening to a podcast you did with a woman psychologist. She had the name of like an island, like Belize.
Yeah. Yeah. Beliza.
Was
Yeah.
it like, yeah. And I think you said something about like, you put your kids to bed, right? And
Hmm.
like talk before bed.
Yeah.
And for me, I completely agree with that. Like, I think that has been for my relationships with my kids, that like best time. So my 23-year-old especially, when he's home, he lives in New York now, he has a job, but all of his life, he will come into our bedroom and just stand at the foot of the bed and just chat. Like, that's when he's the chattiest, and still at 23 he still does it, and it makes me so happy. I love it.
That is so cool. My 18-year-old, his favorite two words are let's talk.
Oh,
And it's always at night. It's always at night. And he just wants to basically he just wants to download his day and or just whatever's on his mind. I just love the fact my 17-year-old, he's a bit of a harder vault, like when it comes to that kind of stuff.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But it really, I have noticed though at night when you said that, I almost didn't kind of put two and two together because I think when you're kind of in your own lane, you just sort of just do things habitually. And when he comes home, I'm like, hey man, like, how was your day? What was the best part? Like, and I've noticed the energy in him is like, right? It's more like, but at night, like for
right.
bed, like he'll want to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I get that. What have you found? I want to ask you a million questions about just things that you've heard in your office, but
Hmm.
I would love to if you could share anything like because you work with teenagers, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So like I would love to know like parents who are parents of teens, if they could have an ear into the things that you've heard that probably would surprise them, be like, oh crap, like wow, I didn't know that. Like what are some things that are going on for our teenagers or maybe dynamics in the relationship that we have with our teenagers that parents
Yeah.
are just we just don't know.
Well, the first one is the one I already said, which I really think
Right.
parents need to hear, is that teens really want a better relationship. I mean, they really do. It's just that they don't seem like it, right? Because they're angry and they're distant and whatever, but they do. And then the second thing is the biggest problem that I hear over and over again is in trying to protect teens, we send a message that we don't trust them, that they can't make, we don't trust them to have good judgment. And so, like, take something super basic, right? So, your teen says they want to go to a party and you say no. And what you mean is, I want to keep you safe. Like, but what they hear is, I don't trust you. You'll make a bad decision. You'll get in trouble. And it's that dynamic. I can't tell you how many times I hear, I mean, I
Hmm.
don't know what my parents think. It's like they think I like don't want to go to college and I don't want to get a good job and I don't want to have a successful life. Like, I'm not sure what they think I'm doing here. Like, their vision for their life is they got big dreams, but the way their parents are acting is like they're just like gonna end up in the gutter. That's what I hear all the time.
I mean that makes total sense. My oldest guy, my oldest one, he's a senior and he was out of school for an entire week with this respiratory thing going around. Like literally the kid was like on death's doorstep and he fell behind in his classes and he had like three Fs in school. And it's because he had a bunch of missing assignments. And I'm like, hey man, like we need to turn this stuff in. And he like looks at me like I'm a total idiot. And he's like, I know. I
Don't you think?
know. And I'm like, well, I need, he's like, Dad, you don't have, he's like, trust me when I say I want A's and B's too. And I will get these grades up. I just need some time. Like, you're not telling me anything I don't already know. And I don't know what it was about him, like looking at me like that. And like, or maybe it's the dynamics of our relationship. But I looked at him and I'm like, yeah, I sound like an idiot. Like I really, really do. Like I know you want good grades and you know that I want you to have good grades and I know you're going to do the work to have good grades. I don't even know why I'm saying this out loud. And he's like, yeah. Like just looked at me like,
I
come
mean,
on, man, give me a little bit more than that.
yeah, and like it sounds like you all have such a good relationship. I have to say, I think one of the best conversations that parents can have with teens is about reminders. Because like my one of my things is that we want to be transferring responsibility to our kids as early and often as possible. Like,
Yeah.
look for things to put them in charge of. I remember my oldest son's third grade teacher was like, parents should not remind about homework because third grade doesn't matter. So I'm going to teach your kid the lesson about homework. Don't do it for them. And I thought that was such a great thing. And so if you can have a conversation about what do you want me to remind you about and what do you not? Because interestingly, even the kids who complain that their kids like remind them about homework and like remind them about like eating and things that they're like, I'm in charge of my body. Like I'm 17. I can eat when I want to eat, you know? But even those kids, when they have a conversation, there's certain things they like their parents to remind them about. Like they're like, I still want a parent. I still want to know they're like in this with me. So it's such a cool conversation just to be like, what do you still want me to remind you? Anything? Maybe nothing, you know?
That's really good. That is really, really good. Cause I'm sure like it could be like annoyance, right? I mean, like for teenagers, but then again, like the battle that we face as parents is like, well, if I don't remind them, what if they don't do it? Right. I
But
mean, so
then but then we're just enabling
right.
them to,
Yep.
and you know what we're able, enabling besides them not taking responsibility? We're enabling us being the bad guy.
Yes.
Like it just creates resistance. Like we're trying to help, and now they're like being pissy because we're nagging them, which is it's terrible because we're trying to be helpful and it's like losing in two fronts. Now they're mad at us and they're not taking responsibility. They're just like, I can't tell you how many times I have heard from teens when she reminds me, it just makes me not want to do it. I mean, it's like we're kind of wired that way, right?
Yeah.
Like I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something really interesting, like when you look at your kid and like even if I would have had to do this whole thing all over again, like I think like I was literally just talking to my wife about this last night. I was like, because we were talking about that conversation. I was like, you know what? In hindsight, I think he would have told me I have three Fs right now. I think in hindsight, I would have just said, I know you got it.
Yeah.
You'll take care of it. And I
Yeah.
think for him, that would have been like rocket fuel for him
Mm.
versus like, you need to get those
Mhm.
right. You know, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally.
I'm really fascinated with your background though, because I know one of the things that you really hang your hat on is the resilience, like the
Yeah.
resilience piece. And I'm so curious. You and I are not far off in age. And like, I love, I don't know if you've seen some of these videos, but they crack me up. And the videos run like this. They're like, if you're over 40, you're the last generation to screw with because like we had it like this, and this. We didn't have this, and this. Like there was one video where this guy, and you could tell he's like a millennial. He's like, I'm just curious, like, why did your generation drink out of a hose? Like, was there not running water inside? And then there's this angry woman in her 40s. She's like, that's because our parents wouldn't allow us inside. You know what I mean? Because I
Yes,
mean,
I know what you mean.
yeah, we are. I mean, like I will admit, like I feel like our generation, like we got a little grittiness to us, right? And
I
and
actually, I've never seen that one, but that my
oh,
childhood, my mom was like, the sun's out, you guys go outside. I'll let you know
yes,
when dinner's ready. You had to just like, you had to play with sticks. No
yeah,
joke. Like literally.
totally. Like I remember, like my mom actually has this photo of me. I'm not kidding. Like I took a blanket out of my backyard and I had sticks that I acted like I was rowing a boat on the ocean, and I'm like literally on this blanket in my backyard with sticks. And my mom was
Yeah.
like, "This is awesome!" Like I'm like, "That is I wish she could dig up that picture now." But the thing about with resilience and teenagers, that that's a very interesting space for me. So I just want to ask you a very broad question of what have you found in that field of that combination of resilience and teenagers?
I mean, that's just, this is what I do for a living, right? I could talk about that forever. So, the good news is that resilience can be broken down into skills that anyone can learn and everyone needs, right? So, this is not some thing that you're going to get into like any squishy topics that become like political or, you know, polarizing. This is like skills, like emotional intelligence skills, right? If you're going to learn how to manage your emotions, which you need to do if you're going to be resilient, you need to understand, well, what causes your emotions? Thoughts, right? Oh, that's interesting. So the situation isn't causing my emotions, my thoughts are causing my emotions. Like there's super deep stuff that you can introduce to kids, even kids, you know, 10-year-olds, actually younger, but 10-year-olds is where we usually start with like little simple skills that they're like, oh yeah, I totally get that. So it's actually not difficult. It's just You need to do it and you need to name it. That thing you do where you can name one of your personal strengths, that's resilience, right? Like if you can own your personal strengths and then structure your life around your strengths, you're going to feel good about yourself. You're going to have self-esteem. But think about this. So I remember with my daughter who's now 19, she grew up with me, right? So she heard this stuff all day long. So she could name 30 strengths until she went to middle school. And then I
Really?
remember one day in the car on the ride home, I don't know, I had something going on or whatever. And I was like, oh, yeah, we're talking about strengths today in one of the schools. I was like, what's one of your strengths? She wouldn't do it because that middle school thing where you're so looking around at other people, trying to fit in, just insecure. And she was not more insecure than anyone else, but like saying a strength out loud feels like super kind of braggy and weird. And I just remember thinking like, oh, that's so interesting. Like we do. Like if we don't get kids normalize talking about things like these are my strengths, like this is who I am. I'm good at different things than you. Then they can like forget how important that is.
That is so true. And you're right. I mean, that middle school, I've got a fifth grader. He's about ready to go into middle school. And,
Yeah.
we just had this conversation last night. She's like, what do you think it's going to be like for him? I was like, I don't know. Middle school is like a tough one. But
Yeah.
do you think that's a that's a good conversation? I mean, this is a dumb question, but like that's a really good conversation for us to spearhead with our kids is like
About the
let's
potential of middle school being hard.
know about their strengths.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And you want and keep doing it because it probably happened for you too, where it's like one day you ask and they're like, you know,
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
yeah. But
Can,
there's something to be said for that last thing that I thought you were talking about too, which is to like, like it could be hard. Like there was this interesting research that they did for college kids, actually. They did it at Duke. And when they first got to college and they were it was like this like hour or two long thing. It wasn't a big deal, but they were kind of brought into a group and they were introduced to some older kids who basically said, it can be hard when you first get to college to find your people, and it can be hard to manage your time, and just know that like the beginning can be difficult, but you'll figure it out. Those kids compared to the kids that just didn't have that conversation, they're I can't remember exactly what benchmarks they were looking at, but it was probably like anxiety and depression. But either way, their mental health outcomes were so much better that freshman year of college, just for expecting, like, hey, this is gonna be hard, but you'll be okay. But just know that it's gonna be hard. So there's something to be said for that.
yeah, it's almost like it's a real conversation, about reality. It's
Hmm.
like here's the good and here's the bad, and and just bringing this to the awareness front versus like it's not, oh, it's gonna be sunshine and rainbows and unicorns. Don't you worry, it's gonna be a magical land of just joy, which is
Totally.
not the
And it
case.
reminds me of the thing that I think is probably the most important message that like we as parents can convey. Like if it's the theme that runs through everything we convey is life's going to be hard sometimes, but you don't have to be alone. I'm always here with you. Right? Like that twofold message, life's going to be hard, but I gotcha. We can do this together. That's like as good as it gets for any of us.
Do you think a lot of parents don't say something like that because they're too afraid that the kid is going to be too dependent?
That's such an interesting question. I have never had that. I'm trying to think, like in my practice working with parents and teens, I have not ever had that conversation actually come up. I get where it's coming from, but I've just never had it happen. So that doesn't mean that people aren't thinking it, but because I think it's cultural. In my experience, way more parents, and maybe it's the ones that are bringing their kids to therapy, are way more over involved,
Yeah.
right? Than the ones who are worried about, like, I don't want you to be too dependent on me, right? Those are just not the ones who are coming into my office.
I just asked this question because, like I said, I've got four boys and, like my oldest is 18, but my 11-year-old last night, we're having this conversation at bedtime. And he just like we like to play this game, called Ask Me Anything, and he comes up with some of the craziest questions, and so do I, but we'll go back and forth with it. And last night he asked me this question that completely threw me off, but I thought it was fascinating. He goes, "What if I grow up and I'm poor?" And I'm like, "What? Like, what do you mean?" He's like, "Well, what if I grow up and like I can't afford a house or like I'm homeless? Like, can I come back here and live with you?" And I'm not kidding, Kristen. This makes me probably sound like a terrible parent, but there's a part of me of uh, I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, I think he's checking in to see like how like safe he is here and that kind of thing. Like, is mom and dad gonna be there for him and that kind of thing? And then the other thing too, like, but in my mind, I was like, I don't want to give this guy like I don't want to paint the picture that this kid's life is going to be a disaster and he's going to be poor and homeless. Like I feel like even if we start talking about that, we're putting that thing in his head. Like no, like that's not even an option. Like this is you're going to be fine. You're probably going to make plenty of money. You're going to have this. But I joked with him at first. I was like, no, you can't. And he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'll buy you a tent. Like go outside. I was like, you can't come back home though. Like, no way. I was like, I'm not having a 30-year-old in my house. I'm just not doing it. And he was just like, are you serious? And I was like, come on, man. I was like, dude, you always have a bed here. Always, 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 always. I always got your back. I was like, at the same time, you know, I, you're going to be just fine. You're going to be great. Like, I really do believe that. Like, but in my mind, I was like, I don't know if I've ever been asked that question. And if I tell him he's always got a spot here, is he going to be too dependent on us? Yeah, but that was just an idiotic thought. But now that
I
we're
don't think
talking,
it's
you and I,
idiotic. Like, I
I'm
think that the
curious.
way that you talk to your kids is so fantastic. And to me, these are all just ongoing conversations, right? I mean, I always say, then say that. Like, he's only 11, so maybe now's not the time. But, like, there are a lot of dots to connect between an 11-year-old and a homeless 30-year-old, right? And,
True.
but those are good conversations to keep having because the point is, like, he's going to have decisions to make all along the way that you're going to be happy to help him in because there are decisions that lead to being able to support yourself and there are decisions that lead to home and there's sometimes just other things happen, right? But I mean, and when you're the point also about you saying I don't want you to be too dependent, that's a great conversation to have with him, right? Again, he's 11, but like when he's as he gets older, like what would that look like? Like what would be too dependent and not too dependent? And like how would he feel about that? And what does he think about that? You know what I mean? Like if you don't know the answer, ask your kid. That's what I always say.
It's a really good point. That is a really good point. Um, I'm curious though too, like you said resilience, it's all based on skills, right?
I believe that it is skills that anyone can learn.
Okay. Are there skills that we're teaching our kids not knowingly that's making them actually less resilient? Like, are there things that we're doing that's actually taking that resilience away?
I mean, there are tons of them. Again, like, what are we talking about, right? Like, I mean, one of the things when I'm not, this isn't going to apply to you, but certain people have families where one parent is like not reliable, not like emotionally reliable, right? And so when a kid has to like read the emotions of that parent, that's a skill. Yeah, it's a skill to be able to read people's emotions, but you don't want to have that to be like your superpower, really, right? Because like you shouldn't have to like live your life reading other people's emotions. I mean, everything's a continuum, right? It's great to be able to have empathy and read people's emotions, but again, so like that's you get what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
you shouldn't have to be spending that much time doing that as a kid. So I mean, in tons of families, there are things that we're all doing wrong. I mean, I'm trying to think of what I've done in my household. I mean, I know there are some. See, now nothing's going to come to mind because I'm perfect, but I can't
Well,
think of
you are,
like,
yeah. There is an example that I heard, and it was from Dr. Daniel Amen, and he talked about like every time you do something for your kid that they can physically, mentally, cognitively do on their own, you're stealing their confidence. I want to know if you think there's any truth to that.
I would agree with that. I mean, it's a balance, right? Every time.
Right.
Like I think your kid was asking you, like, you got my back? Like, can you, like, so it's like sometimes we just do things because it's kind and it's like a way that we show love, right? But, I basically agree. I mean, that's what I was saying about transferring responsibility. We want our kids to take responsibility for everything that is age appropriate for them to take responsibility for. And we are on the sidelines supporting them, but they're driving the bus.
That makes sense. That makes sense. It's what other skills can we teach them to make them more resilient? Or is it just a matter of, you said something earlier that I thought was really, really great. And that is give our kids responsibility as early as possible and as often. Is that correct?
Hmm.
Is there any type of guideline that we can maybe look to or follow of like, okay, by this age, like your kid should be able to do these things?
I mean, again, my answer is always going to be about conversations. So it would be about a conversation with your kid because every kid is different, right? They mature at different ages. And then the adults who you would consider experts around them, right? So, like, you have someone who's going to enter fifth grade, like between what your kid and your wife and a teacher who you trust and their football coach, like, you're going to get a good consensus, right, of what they should be able to be responsible for. So talk to people, right? That's what I always say. Like, but especially include your kid in the conversation. You don't have to give them everything they want, but like,
Right.
you want to know, and you want to create a path. Like, if they say, well, I should be able to, like, have whatever curfew I want and go to any party I want and not have you check on me when I walk in the door and blah blah. Really? Okay, so this is where we are today. You're gonna have this curfew, and not every party, but, like, do that well, and maybe in 6 months we'll raise your curfew by an hour, right? I mean, you want to give them a pathway to more and more responsibility, like very specifically like that.
Interesting. Okay. What about what advice would you give for responsibility for preteens? And I know all these are like more or less like for their conversations,
Hmm.
but I also think that there's a lot of parents out there that think their kids aren't necessarily ready for certain things, but they
Hmm.
actually quite frankly are.
But how do you know that they quite frankly are? Like, how would you know that?
I don't really know. I mean, actually through your advice, which would be conversation, like talking to
Right?
them about it. Yeah.
'Cause you can hear how they're thinking. Like, if you
Right.
get in regular conversations, you can hear, well, why do you think that's a good idea? Or why would you make that decision? Why should I give that to you? Who are you? Like, you can just hear. That's why the conversation is the answer to everything. Because if they're missing pieces of information, then now you know, oh, I got to give them this. Like, their reasoning for this is completely faulty. They need this bit of information, because they're not talking to you. They're talking to whoever they're talking to, of their friends, or they're listening to someone on social media or something, right?
Hmm.
And the
Yeah.
other thing that, you ask for skills, and there are so many skills but one of the ones that I think is overlooked, and I always say is the most important set of skills, is to teach our teens to trust their own guts. So I call
Okay.
it inner wisdom, right? And we forget a lot of the times to teach our kids that we can feel in our bodies if a decision is a good decision for us, if it will serve us, or if a person is like an open, safe feeling person. And we can feel in our bodies when those things aren't true. And we want our kids to connect the dots so, like, they can listen to their own red flags. And when there's like a disconnect between what some peer is thinking and like what their own body is telling them, that is really important information. What's going on right here in their body.
Can I give you a real scenario and you help us through this?
Yeah.
So let's just say you have a teenager that opens up to you about a friend of theirs that isn't the best influence on them, right?
Hmm.
And then, but you see them start to hang out with this person. They've made some less than desirable decisions with this person. They also are very consciously aware that they're not making the best decisions while around this person.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you've had the conversation around like, hey, if you feel like something isn't right and you feel like it could be a problem, you might want to listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like, but I still did it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
How do we have that conversation of like after a teenager knows that the decision they made wasn't a good one, but they're telling us anyway, if that makes sense. Like how do we have
That's
that
super
conversation better?
interesting. So like it feels like it's still over there in the you want to keep conversation going more than anything. Like that would be my number one priority to do anything to keep the conversation going. So we can talk more about that in a second. But another like on the other end of the spectrum of the continuum is what I call rights, responsibilities, and privileges. So there's like three buckets. So our kids have certain rights, right? Like food, shelter, safety, love, medical care. The list is actually pretty small of rights, the way I look at it. And then there's responsibilities and privileges. And one of the things that happens a lot of the times is things that I would consider privileges end up in the rights category, like phones and driving to things and extracurriculars and private school. I mean, there's a ton of things you could decide. Do you really have a right to that, or is that a privilege? And privileges need to be tied to responsibilities, but very specific ones. So, like a lot of times, parents, like if they get everything the kid does wrong, they just take their phone away, right? It's like the only consequence there is. But if you tie them to specific responsibilities, then it's like when your teen does something that's like clearly not what we have agreed to, then it's not you being like mean and taking away their phone. It's like, oh, they lost that privilege, right? But so it doesn't seem like you're really there because it sounds like what you're saying is like your teen isn't doing something that's so bad that you feel like they should lose any privilege.
It's a good question. Obviously, this is a real case scenario, right? Yeah. And I don't know. And when I say, has done bad things, it's not even that bad. It's just like I'm trying to really understand so for instance, if you're gonna make whatever decision you're about to make and you know
Mhm.
it's not right, but you made it anyway, but then your teenager comes to you and tells you that they made this decision anyway, and like you've created like this great relationship with them where they can tell you everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's consequence free. There's definitely a conversation that needs to be had, but I'm not exactly sure what I'm even really asking here, other than like, what if those things continue to happen? Do you take away like, and even if the kid is like, God bless. I feel like I'm really butchering this situation. Like I said, the thing is it's not that bad, but at the same time, like I want to really hit home to this kid, like, hey, when you feel this in your gut that this is not right,
Yeah.
maybe don't do it.
So, but yeah, there's so many other factors than that, right? So I'll give you an example of my 23-year-old who's been my best person for this. It sounds to me like what you want to keep is the conversation going, right? And so what happened to me with that child of mine in high school was it was vaping, right? Which I just had I think it's the scourge of the earth, right? We all do. And so I had a hard line in the sand about it, but it was gonna get to the point where either he lied to me or he kept talking and we figured out some way to talk about this thing that I had a hard line in the sand about, right? So it's like I feel like you could do the same thing that I did, which is I don't know what to do here. I'm not sure how to parent here. I just said all the stuff you just said to me. Like, I'm trying to make sure that you have like very clear boundaries of what is like good and bad, right and wrong. But the most important thing for me is that we keep talking. So, what am I supposed to do here? Because I don't want you to lie to me, but I completely disagree with this. So, help me understand how to parent you, right? And he said, once we had that conversation, he was like, you know what? I'm ashamed. I don't want to do this. It's actually a goal of mine to quit. When I get ashamed, I do think about not telling you. He was like, but if you're telling me that like you're willing to be in this with me, then let's make a plan for how I can like maybe do it less. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to not do it the rest of high school. I can't. Like socially, I just can't. I was like, okay. So we just made a plan where like I was like, how much do you want to do it like when he was going out to a party? Like what's your plan? He's like, I don't have my own, but if someone offers me, I'll do it, but I'll try to only do it once. Whatever. But and then he was like, but ask me tomorrow when when we're talking. And so again, like I just wanted to like keep the conversation going so that it could be real, because otherwise then you just lose them. Then they just don't talk to you anymore, right?
And that's what you don't, that's like, that's the crucible right there.
Right.
It's like, man, I really want to do something about this, but if I'm too extreme with it, this kid's not going to talk to me.
Right.
And that's really, to be honest, like at the end of the day, that's what I really want, is for
Right.
this line of communication to never go away.
So he's admitting that he's making poor decisions. He doesn't agree with them. So there would
Correct.
just be more conversation right there. Like, what are the factors that are going into that? Like that, you want to like get so curious, like, with him, that you're not even being judgmental. You're literally being curious, because that's what I would do as a therapist. Like if he came in my office, he has 100% responsibility for his life, right? Because I'm not his parent. So this is just a young adult sitting in front of me, and I'm like, well, what do you want to do? Like your parents want this, but like where are you on it? Like you just totally disagree, or you want, right? Like you want to try to talk to him like that, so you can understand like what is his vision? Like is he going to do this less and less? Is he going to keep doing it? Is he going to what's going on?
His vision is a lot like what your son was talking about. He's just like, I just, I don't want to do this anymore. And here's the interesting thing. I don't ever see him do anything, like I said, I don't want the audience's imagination to go freaking crazy here, because it's not even that big of a deal. But I will say this, it's always when he's around this other kid, and
Mm-hmm.
and never when he's around somebody else. It's
Yeah.
always this one person. It's like, that's the common denominator. But the common denominator is also him deciding to do this thing.
That's a great conversation, though, which you've probably already had, because it sounds like you've had so many good
We've had a
conversations.
lot
Like,
of conversations, yeah.
is he connecting the dots that it's that kid? And like that'll be something forever, right? Like the people we surround ourselves with. I mean, now it sounds preachy, but like it's actually true, like in business or whatever. And it's just, it doesn't have to be a judgy conversation, but just like it's an interesting thing for him. He's gonna have choices, especially when he leaves the house and is off doing whatever he's doing.
Right.
It's just awareness. Like, am I having people around me who lift me up and bring out the best in me,
Or not.
or not?
Or not. Yeah. So let's do this though, because I still want to talk just a little bit more about your program, what you do. So you've got this thing called the relationship reset, and I want you to tell me about that.
Well, like I said before, the biggest problem with teens and parents is not talking. And it's
Right.
like all of a sudden there's like this years worth of just stuff in there, resentments and miscommunications and misunderstandings. And so I wanted to create like something that's so simple that it would walk you through resetting your relationship. So it's basically one conversation. But the thing is, you can either do it two ways. You can do it like 14 days, like 3 minutes a day. So it's like just little teeny, or you can do it in a weekend where you spend a little bit more time, but it's only one conversation with your teen. But it takes a little time, because you as a parent are going to got to get yourself in the right mindset, right? You got to like look at like, what are your parenting beliefs? What are your beliefs about your kid? Like, do you actually believe you're a good parent? Do you believe your kid like has good judgment or bad? There's some like prep work you need to do, right? Before you're going to just have a conversation with your teen. And then there's some, like, it's all little worksheets. Like, it's super simple, super easy. You don't even have to do the worksheets. You can literally like do it on your app. Like I said, 3 minutes a day, answer questions, but it just gets you in the mindset to then, the one worksheet that's important is you hand your teen, you actually let them watch like a 2-minute video of me saying, this is what you're going to do. You're going to have one conversation where your parent only listens. So you're going to fill out this worksheet, you're the teen, and you're going to read the worksheet to your parent, and they are not going to comment. They're not going to rebut. They're not going to say anything. They're just going to listen. But it's obviously important things on the worksheet, right? It's like, what, you start with something positive, like we said before. You start with something positive about your parents, but then like, what do you need for the relationship to feel better? And like, what's your vision for your life? And what do you think your rights, responsibilities, privileges should be? Like, super simple. Then your parent goes away, thinks about it, process it with another worksheet, and then you come back together and you like compare. Like, what are the things that the parent thinks and needs and the teen needs? Because everything's always about needs, right? What do I need from you in order to feel like our relationship is better, in order to feel like you see me, you hear me, you trust me, you care about me, right? So it's just, of all the resilience training I've done, and I've worked with like Navy SEALs and LAPD and like tons of different populations. This relationship reset, it just takes one conversation with the right like intention of, I love you and I want to have a better relationship. And well, every time the teens want it too. And again, you don't have to solve everything, but you just reset. So now we know how to talk to each other. Now we know how to disagree. Now we know like a little process to use when there's, some conflict between us, instead of just doing that same old stuff.
Mm,
That was a lot of
okay.
work.
No, I love it. It's fantastic. I do have a question for you though. Like let's just say, let's take a typical, relationship between a teenager and a parent.
Hmm.
And as soon as that parent starts talking and like, okay, so listen, that teenager can't help but perceive, through their eyes, like you're just being an annoying parent right now.
Hmm.
Right. So
Hmm.
you seem like you are so good at teeing up these conversations. Like just the couple of examples that you've used, even on this show alone, like I'm just sitting here, I kind of put myself in that. How would I respond to my mom if I was a teenager and she talked to me like this? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I would love that. Like that would be amazing. But I know from a parent's perspective, we go into those conversations and we're like, well, I can't say this because then it's not going to be effective, when in actuality it might be. So like, what are some best demonstrated approaches to this conversation to where your
I mean,
teen isn't going to
again,
look at
like,
you like you're annoying?
yeah, I mean, so that is why I literally like did a step by step by step, so you don't even have to think for yourself for the relationship reset. But I have a free resource. It's called the Two Questions. That if someone goes, we'll put the link in. It's a free resource, and it's like it's this 4-page thing that gives you two really good, kind of like you're asking for, like how do you tee things up. The first one is just, you want to give your teen as much control as possible, right? So when we start like a conversation just out of the blue, like you realize that teens walk around a lot of the time like, oh no, when are they going to talk to me? I don't want to have a conversation, right? So we want to just like start with a positive intention. Hey, I learned something new and I'm thinking there's something that could maybe help us have a better relationship. But the first thing that this woman said is, so, like, you need some control over the situation. So, like, can you let me know sometime in the next couple days when you have 5 minutes for me to just tell you a little about what it is, just so that we can like see if it might be something that's good. Because you just giving them the opportunity to be like, I don't want to talk after school and I don't want to talk at 6 a.m. is the really important first step. And then the thing about like, you want to lead with asking your teen to give you feedback, right? Like, which is hard. Like, it's hard as a parent. It's hard to take feedback anyway, right? But like, especially from our teen, who we think is just going to be like, oh, great, just like unleash whatever.
Right.
But we're asking our teen to take feedback from us. So why
Very
wouldn't
true.
we demonstrate that we can do that too? So it's like, that's what you want to lead with. Listen, I just want to know like one thing. I'm not saying I'm going to be able to do it, but in your opinion, what is one thing that's actually doable that I could do to improve our relationship? And just see what they say. Because most of them, if you're genuine and you actually are listening, they're like, they're not going to say like chocolate cake for breakfast every day, right? They're going to like say something real, most kids.
What if you get the I don't know?
Then I would let them think about it.
Okay.
I don't know is a shield, right? It's, which is okay, and I get it. Like, especially if this isn't again for you because you're a great conversationalist with your kids, but a lot of parents don't talk this way with their kids, so it's like weird. And so, I would be like, well, can we come back like tomorrow or sometime and just like think about it because it's important to me. Like I'm trying to do something different here, but like the most important thing is the input from the teen. Like that's what we're trying to change because most parenting feels very top down, right?
So
And
true.
it should. There is an important hierarchy. I mean, we are the
Right.
boss, but you want to, as they get older, you want to, bring them at least into the conversation.
So true. That is so true. This has been so helpful, like unbelievably helpful. I know that there's a few places that people can find you and follow you, but where can we download the two questions in particular? And then I know you've got, the relationship reset, you have an app, you have all kinds of really great stuff.
Yeah, and I have a program called Mindset Moments that I'm taking
Yeah.
into schools. So if anyone has a connection with a school or we work with mentoring organizations or sports teams, just it's basically just conversation prompts that go to parents also. So they go to the organization, but also to parents. So it's the skill of the week, super easy, and they just help you have resilience building conversations. So the best place is MacDermott Method, which is Mac, M-A-C. And
Amazing. Yeah.
that's where my website is. That's where if you go to either Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, they're all MacDermott Method. And I have these 1 minute parenting videos I've been doing too, which are kind of fun. They're just like trying to take these kind of skills and like make them super bite size.
I love that. And I mean, that's what everybody's itching for is like the bite-sized clips of something a skill they can learn in seconds and go run with it. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
this is awesome. So guys, you won't have to look very far. Head on over to thedadedge.com/523 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/523 for this show. We'll have all of Kristin's social media links in there, all of her resources, everything that we talked about today will be there for you. And I got to tell you, Kristin, this has been such a joy to talk to you. I almost feel that I'd want to do like 2 or 3 more episodes with you so we can dive even deeper into this.
Yeah.
But this has been so helpful.
Well, I would love to do that. And I will also give, like, when we put the links in there, I'll give a good discount on like the relationship reset for your dads.
I really appreciate that. Is there a coupon code that they should use?
So what I'll do is I'll create a separate link. So by the
Okay.
time it's up, they'll just go there and that'll be the page where they can get it.
Got it. Okay. Well, guys, we'll have that in the show notes
Yeah.
for you. So not to worry. Don't worry about coupon codes or whatever. We'll have the correct links in the show
Yeah.
notes for you. Not to worry. So, Kristin, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, and I'll come back
Bet.
anytime.
Awesome. Thank you so much.